Welcome to the Triart Audio setup video for the Pebbles TA1 turntable. I'm going to show you from the very beginning what to do and the best setup techniques of the table. We're going to start with the table completely disassembled and then build it back together again. Likely when you receive the turntable, it'll be more together than what you'll see here. But if there's any need to take it apart for maintenance, this will give you some handy tips on how to do it without damaging the table. So here we go. First off, the turntable. And yes, it's apart. This is the top and the bottom. Now actually I'm going to turn it around. And first off, we'll put the feet on. They're down here. They're bamboo doweling, like out of the same as the material as the bamboo table, and they're threaded with a Allen bolt, and we'll just thread them into the table. The reason I'm showing you this, it's pretty obvious to put them in, but if you over tighten them, you could go through the laminate on the other side, and that would not be very good. I did that once with an early prototype table. Just snug. Everything I highly recommend is just finger tight, okay? Don't start reefing down on the surface. That could be damaging. All right, it's a 3-point suspension. Great. All right, the next part I would put in this is the holder for the RCA jacks, the output for the Tonearm. And we have, it's on this side, there's a taller part and a shorter part. Put the taller part facing out like this, and it should just wedge in. We were going to glue these parts in, but there's such tight friction fit, and as soon as you glue something in, you're kind of stuck with it that way. I really like just having everything friction fit. It's a much better thing to do. Okay. Now, starting to look like a table, kind of an important part, and the next part will be the bearing, the main bearing for the platter. So what we're going to do before we mount the bearing in the table, I want to show you how to clean the bearing. Again, you don't have to do this when you first receive the turntable, just something you may need to do in the future, okay? So I'm going to pull this out and look at there's quite a suction. There's the ball, the main bearing. We'll just leave that there. Now what I like to use, I'd like to remove the old grease. And the best degreaser I discovered is a brake pad degreaser that they use in auto body shops. I'm going to reach for one now, sorry. And here's one called Clean Flow. So what you would do, and I'm going to simulate this right now, is you would, over a garbage can, spray the shaft, and you can use a cloth, like a cotton cloth, to wipe it off. And then what you would also do is spray the inside of the brass housing, and it's amazing. The oil will just wash away and it'll just sparkle clean. And then once you've done that, you can take a Q-tip, and this product evaporates immediately. So it's, again, really good. It seems to leave virtually no residue, and it just removes any grease and oil. You also would spray the ball bearing over the surface, over a garbage can as well. And then once you've degreased and you're happy with that, lint-free cloth would be a good idea as well. You have to reapply the grease. So next what we would do is we have to reapply the grease. All right? Before I do that, just for 1 second, I'd like to show you that the main housing is brass. The inside of the shaft is copper. It's about a 1/2 inch solid copper plinth that the ball bearing sits in. Now you're probably noticing the ball bearing is quite small compared to the diameter of the brass area. So you'll have to just drop the ball bearing inside, and there's a little indent for the ball bearing to rest in. And if you can't get it to fall into the hole, just use an Allen key to push it into the hole. We didn't want the main bearing to be touching the outside of the wall, so it's just sitting there in a little nest of copper. So at this point, you'll want the bearing lubricant, Tri-Art bearing lubricant, and it'll come in with the turntable. And what I discovered, a way you can, the table comes with a popsicle stick. That's actually more recommended for adding the lubricant to the Tonearm, which we'll be demonstrating. But for the main bearing, if you don't mind getting your hands a little greasy, just a dab on your finger. You'll put just a dab at the end, and then just wipe the outside with grease. You don't need very much. Too much grease is not good. And if you don't quite have enough, that's also not good. But I'll show you what you should listen for. So once you've done that, you'll try to see how the very small amount of grease really holds the air pressure here. It's very finely machined. You have to force it down. Okay, and try to be sensitive to the ball bearing. I know that ball bearing's stuck where it is because there's still grease in it from last time, so it kind of sticks the ball bearing in. So there we go. We now have a nice seating. Now you might be actually going, well, grease, you're using this really thick grease. A lot of turntables use a very thin, light oil. I really like the grease idea. We use it in our factory for all our equipment. This is a synthetic grease. It creates a lot of drag. And I want our motor to work for its job. So if we use a really light oil and the spindle's too flyaway, if I spin it and just spins forever and really nice, the motor has, I feel, more difficulty controlling the speed with this runaway bearing. So we're putting a lot of resistance on the motor, and it's a very heavy-duty motor, and now it's pulling and working, and I think can stay more stable. So what we're going to show now is how to set up the height of the spindle or pulley on the motor and platter height to get the belt working correctly. Now, a little bit backwards way of doing it will be to mount the arm first. We've got a great jig that comes with the Tonearm for getting the Tonearm set up correctly. That will also allow us to get the height of the arm, the height of the platter, and the pulley all lined up in one even setup. You could easily just put the belt on, set up the platter, then you mount the arm, and then you realize you have to adjust again. This will work. Little backwards way of doing it, but you'll see how it all comes together. So at this point, we want to mount the Pebbles Tonearm, which is down here. And yes, this is a strange Tonearm. A little bit unique. Pebbles is all about keeping things simple. So in its design, maybe not in its use, but I think we've solved a lot of the problems for you. So we're going to mount the Tonearm. like this through the Tonearm board. 3 bolts like that. One. The Allen key. Yep. Better face it the right way. There we go. Now when screwing these in, don't over tighten it. Just keep it finger tight. Just a quarter turn on each one, just till you feel it's tight enough without over tightening. I start doing this. If I can't turn it with the strength of my tips of my fingers, then it's tight enough. Obviously, if I put it in this way and reef on it, wow, I could go a lot harder, but that could damage the threading. So that's good, and that's good. Okay, so the arm base is on the table base as well, lack of a better word. We're going to drop the connections through the hole and bring them around. We'll eventually mount them into their holder. We'll leave the main arm there, and now we're going to mount these to the bottom of the arm board. Right now, it doesn't matter how tight they are, just get the threading started. There we go. Okay. All right. Now, the platter, also bamboo. This will make sense in a moment. All right, so starting to look like a turntable again, more like probably how it's going to arrive to you, except for the platter will be mounted in the box underneath. This is still loose, hasn't been tightened. The jig, okay? So this is the point of it. Right now, the main pivoting point is this spike. And I did not show you it. Again, pretty obvious. You can just take it right out. We'll leave it there. This is the lock nut for it. This is how you would adjust the height of your Tonearm. But for right now, the purpose of what we're doing, you take your jig over the spindle of the platter. You'll see it goes right over this part, fits really nice. And this is the secret, is to get everything lined up really well. And of course, this table is quite well set up already. So what you want to do is, and at the very same time of setting the height of this, you're also setting where the arms should be mounted in the table. So the idea is you want, if the main platter was too high or too low, it wouldn't lie flat across. You could even put a bubble level on this. But because we went past the middle section, you can just eyeball and make sure everything's just lying down perfectly flat. If it is, you can literally just lock it. So if I simulate the platter being too high, and I turn this up a little bit, now it's going to, sit funny, right? Too high. So as soon as you bring it down, and now I'm too far down, let's see, lock it a bit. and sort of tap it. There. That's actually the right height. So I'm going to just, again, finger tight, just lock it down. Take this off for a second. This off. Okay, so now we have the bearing, the main platter bearing at the correct height for the tone arm and for the pulley. So we'll put the belt on. I like to just pull it across, and slips off sometimes, and over. So on the pulley for the motor, there are two grooves, one for 33 1/3, which we're on now, and then for 45 LPs, you go up above. And that's 45 and then 33. You can do that with the platter on. You don't have to take the platter off. Other tables, you have to remove the platter. This one, it's out and exposed, so it's quite easy to do. So when we turn it on, we let the belt kind of seat itself, find it where it wants to be. And it may, depending how level the table is and how level everything is, it may travel a little bit, but nope, that's looking quite good. It's riding low, and that gives us the room we need for when we go to 45. It'll go up, and we're still looking good. So actually looks great. All right, so next we'll put the platter back on. So now we're going to screw down the arm board, and the jig has it in the correct distance. Everything's, it's wonderful, it's right where it should be. What I like to use is one of these right angle to just make everything straight. I'm kind of obsessed with straight. So if you have one of these around, just lie it on the table, and now you can just prevent this type of thing from happening. Because we're a single point, pivot point, it doesn't matter. It's not crucial to how it performs, but aesthetically, getting it all straight like this is really nice. So we're good to go. Tight on here, straight, and all we have to do is tighten down the two bolts on the bottom. And now that's the last moment where you make sure everything's where you want it to be, and you can just do the final last, again, only finger tight turn on these, and you're locked in. Okay, there. At this point, we're really close now. We're going to mount the RCAs. Left and right. I would prefer the right on the right side. So let's see. Well, you can see it. Okay. So really, and actually there is a reason why we put this shrink wrap, heat shrink over here so thick. It makes a nice finger grab so you can hold on to it there without damaging the wire. And you'll just push it through, put the little white jacket on, and then lock it. I like to keep it horizontal with the shrink wrap because I really can grab onto it and just a nice kind of turn until it's, again, finger snug. Nothing's worse than when they're a little bit loose, and every time you put a connection in there, they're wobbly and loose and falling around. There. Great. Looks good. So that's a way of setting up the table using our jig. There's other jigs on the market for setting up cartridges. So if you have a jig, like this is a Ficard setup protractor, there's the Denison protractor, there's many different ones on the market. The way I have used this in the past, you put the table on, or the protractor on, you'd set it to 222 millimeters. And you'll see, actually, let's see what a good job I did with ours. Yeah, there you go. We're right on you get tip to line up. In fact, probably using our gauge is a little bit different in that you have to make a choice on where you think 222 is on the gauge here, where ours is 222. So again, ours likely is more accurate. There's just a little white line, so I have to, there, if I had it right on, I guess, there we go. So, and this one tends to want to slide back and forth on the spindle, but that's another way you can set up the actual pivot point to spindle point, is by using other gauges and measurement tools. Okay, so I've mounted the cartridge. Magic of video. The cartridge is now mounted. I'm using a basic cartridge that we can easily remove the stylus. Safest way to mount a cartridge is to leave the stylus off and then snap it back in. Most of the cartridges you're going to use on this table will have a fixed stylus. Keep the stylus guard on and be very careful. So what we're going to see is we have the arm, and we'll mount the arm rest, I think would be the best next step. Arm rest mounts into this hole here. And it's fully adjustable up and down. So what I'm going to do right now is just flip this over. I'm doing all this without the arm grease. The arm grease right now, if you apply the arm grease too soon, and that's kind of really what I don't want people to do, the very last thing you're going to do is put the arm grease in. This way you have full freedom, no grease to deal with, and no mess until the very end. So I'm going to flip this over. Yep, feels like a good rough height, actually a little high. So bring it over and down a little bit. There is a lock nut for that. Once you set the height, we'll lock it in. Okay, so grab the main counterweight. And once I flip this over, and you know what? Again, this is our, take that off while I'm doing this. I'm going to flip this over, and it gets a little cumbersome, but not too bad. It's going to mount the weight, the counterweight. And again, don't tighten this too much right now, and kind of try to find just a nice resting balance. Okay, there we go. Put the stylus back on. All right, we're also missing the lift, finger lift. That just, again, everything's friction fit, just down. Some people may like the finger lift this way. Might be more natural for them, or this way. I would move it if you're, when you're setting up the cartridge, you can get at the spots easier for tightening down the Allen keys, Allen bolts. Okay, we're looking more like a setup arm. You'll see that you can now start manipulating it, moving it around. There's no grease yet. Sort of, yeah, the rest is a little high. Going to put it down a little bit and try it again. Okay, very wobbly without the bearing grease. Okay, but again, just sort of doing your rough setup. Okay, and at this point, you would use a gauge for setting, again, a very rough pressure gauge or pressure weight. This cartridge likes around 1.6 grams, so we would set this up at 1.6 grams. Actually, funny, it actually feels, if I was guessing, that's about 1.6 right on there. I can see if I'm correct, but it feels good for the demonstration. Really important is to make sure the Tonearm wire isn't touching. This, you can manipulate it a little bit, pull on it, kind of get it so that it looks like it's dressed really nice, and swing over. Yeah, it's looking really good. It's free and not interfering with the movement of the arm. At this point, we're ready to do a little more intense setup of the tone arm. So I'm going to get a record. Sometimes don't use your most valuable record for this part, because it's just, we're just going to be using it to get heights correct. Again, no grease yet, so quite wobbly. I'm not concerned about that at the moment. You'll see that came with the tone arm what I think is the smallest bubble level I've been able to find. I love this bubble level. It comes with the tone arm, because now I can start using it in interesting ways to get the height of the table correct, and the arm correct, sorry. So one, you can put it right on the head shell. It virtually weighs nothing, so it won't damage your cantilever. You can get in a rough idea of how level the arm is to the table, to the platter. And darn, this is set up really well again. I didn't mean to do that. I should have unset it up to show you. But right now, the level is perfectly in the center here. And I always like to start with a level tone arm, okay? Another spot you can try it is right over the pivot point. And in fact, the great thing about having a bubble level is for the azimuth, we have two weights on the side. By adjusting your weights out, you can change the azimuth, the tilt of the arm. And again, you can get a really accurate reading with the bubble level. You'd probably, yeah, that's helping. I think to counteract the lift, it tends to want to go this way. That's actually bringing it over to this side. There, wow, that's right in the center. You can double check by bringing it up to the top. The final adjustments should always be done by ear. Okay. But for right now, that's, again, a good rough-in setup of the table. You can also verify the azimuth when you bring it over. And I don't mind doing the azimuth without the grease. The grease slows everything down. And you can look at it this way and see how level the table is, or the arm to the platter. Again, all this play is not important at the moment. Okay. So we have the azimuth set up, roughed in, with the bubble level. We have the height of the arm. Actually, when I bring the arm over, again, the height of the arm to platter with the record on is also level, so it's all looking really good. What we need to do now is just make sure the stylus to pivot point is correct. At this point, that type of gauge does not come with the table, so we would go back to another company's protractor. So I'll take this off. And again, I've got the ficard one here. Put it on. That has to come up and down. Now this is how you set up an arm on a table, or the stylus pivot point. And using the ficard's directions, set up your cartridge. Now we're really close to adding the grease to the tone arm. So I'm going to once again get this record. And let's even put the Pebbles record clamp on this time. We'll get the turntable spinning. Still no grease in the tone arm. Just going to bring it over and have a look. Okay. And again, the bubble level, I'm just taking a bit of a look. Everything looks really good. Okay. So now I feel confident that I'm going to adjust the speed of the turntable. Okay. So I'm just going to take this off for a moment. And I'd like to, and again, we can adjust the whole speed of the turntable. The reason I want to get the arm on is so we adjust the speed with the arm on, with a record, and the drag of the arm in the record will get a more accurate speed reading. So with an Allen key that's provided, these two bolts are what you're going to loosen, not the two smaller ones. They're holding the motor onto the underside of the motor plate. So loosen these so they just feel loose, and that will, to allow you to have some movement here, okay? And you can see how the whole motor system is moving back and forth. Literally, that's how you adjust the speed. Again, extremely simplified. Simplified bearing, simplified arm, just a few pieces. This is a V-shaped groove inside the spindle. So again, just by moving this forward and back, changes the tensions, changes the loading of the belt into the groove, and adjusts the speed. A very simple system to keep the table just, all the money is into the sound of the turntable. Now I'm going to stop the table for a moment. The way I set up the table is I have one of these digital tachometers. There's other ways of setting up the speed. There's little cards you can mount on top of the platter with a strobe, not as accurate as a digital readout. There's actually apps for your phone now that you can actually set your turntable up as well with a specific record and use your phone as well. So I like using this device. So we're going to, and now it requires a reflective tape. So actually, because I use this a lot, I have a little piece of reflective tape here. And I want to just mount it onto the side of the platter, right? And because of the height, I use one of these just to get the reader high enough, and I'll turn it on. So we'll turn on the turntable, get it spinning, and I'll take a quick glance at the readout just to see where we are for speed. First I suggest it's a good idea to let the table spin for a little bit at first. We've done a lot to the table. It hasn't spun yet today, so I like to actually, even at this point, just play. If your cartridge is all set up, still no grease, you can play the table without the grease. Let a side play through, or just wait 20 minutes of it spinning. Again, to get the most accurate, the oil will be warmed up, and everything's warmed up, and you'll get a more accurate reading. So once you've done that, what I like to do is adjust the two screws so that there's just enough tension that maybe just my thumb against it, you can just move really slowly. Easier to move it in than to move it out. You have to reach over and pull it back out if you've gone too far. But just slight movement so that once you've hit that magic speed, and now I'm looking at the gauge, just a little bit more to get the speed correct. Once you've hit that number, you can now tighten it down, and you're where you want to be. We've reached a point where I'm happy with the speed, happy with the level of everything. Everything's mounted on. I guess now it's time, sooner or later, we have to put some grease on this arm. The grease, I find, it's a way of adjusting the resonance point, actually, of the arm. I haven't really talked about that. Without the grease, it plays beautifully. It sounds great even without the grease. Some people may prefer it without the grease. It's very jumpy though without the grease. A little weird, but really the grease helps open the whole staging of the sound up musically and tonally balance wise. The grease makes a big difference. It's the stabilizing mechanism behind this single pivot. So what you would do is just flip the arm over. The arm is long enough, the arm wire, to do this. I'm going to stop it spinning. And we've provided this special applicator, or popsicle stick, and the bearing lubricant. What you'll do is take a very small amount of it, just enough to fit inside the provided cup, inside the Tonearm, the cone-shaped cup. So you'll just apply the grease. Let's see if I can do it and show it at the same time. Just a little blob of it like that. I'm going to put a little bit more right there, right inside. So, it will look like that to start. And I'm going to flip it back around. Move this out of the way. And just press with my finger. Okay? Now, I'm just going to try it out by just moving it forward and back, up and down. I think you can see how much more stable it is now. It's not wobbly. That's kind of what we want. The whole table will, or the arm will, once it's under movement. The interesting thing about grease, it's got a very short rheology. It tends to, if there's no movement, it's very thick, but as soon as you apply movement, and in this case it's the table spinning, the viscosity drops. So it will help to center as soon as you put it on there, the flow and everything will get the arm working. I also like to kind of raise and lower the arm a little bit once I've added the first greasing, kind of work it in and then down, up and down. Now you can do a little more of the balancing trick with our great little bubble level, and just make sure nothing's being thrown off. Actually, it's looking pretty good. Level again. Great. And let's see here. Yeah, it looks good. I'm going to now just to flip it over one more time. Yeah, I'm going to add a little more. So what it seems you can do too is you can adjust the sound of the arm by how much you apply. You can start by adding just a very small amount of grease and listen to it, and slowly work your way up with the grease. By flipping the arm over and back, just make sure the grease is well distributed inside the cup. And I'm going to do that one more. I added a little more grease. I'm going to put it back down, push with my finger to the center of the point. And now let's try it again. Feels really good, super stable. Yeah, actually it went down really nice. At this point I'd be turning the volume up, and I reached for the volume. That's how natural that was, but I don't have the sound on. Now, the fine-tune adjusting is, again, at this point, I do it by ear. You listen, you can work with your bubble level. Some people have favorite recordings that they like to listen to. Do a lot of visual inspection of the arm. Looks better. I can also put the bubble level and do it that way as well. Okay, so now we're virtually done. We've got the table level, the arm leveled to the platter, the table is level, spindle for the speed is adjusted. So really at this point, I'm quite happy with the setup. I hope, I mean, for people that are used to setting up tables, not a lot of this is new to you. It's just our main bearing area here is a little different. The greasing here, some of the speed adjustment may be new to you. I'm excited about the setup. It looks good, and now it's just a matter of getting down to playing music. So enjoy. Hope this has been helpful, and if you have any questions, you can contact us on our website for some tips if you have any questions about this at all. And otherwise, enjoy. Thank you very much for purchasing the Pebbles Turntable. Thank you.